How does the Coase Theorem provide an alternative to government regulation and provision of services? How is the definition of private property critical to the Coase Theorem? And the Coase Theorem is essentially states that if property rights are assigned, an efficient outcome can be reached. In the absence of transaction costs, I think is what it is off the top of my head. Our junior tutor says it right here. Coase Theorem states that if there are no transaction costs involved, a mutually beneficial outcome can be attained, regardless of which party has ultimately been awarded property rights. So suppose there is a turbine company operating a windmill, which is very noisy. The people living in the periphery of the windmill, the people living in the periphery of the windmill get disturbed by this noise. Now, there are no property rights in the noise spectrum, as in who owned how much noise decibels. The households then can take this plea of theirs to court. The court can either favor the turbine company's plea of retaining their business, or they can favor the plea of the people residing by the windmill. If the court decides that the households have the right to live there in peace without noise, then the company has to shut down its operations. They won't be able to run the windmill anymore. Suppose the company decides to compensate the neighboring households and the value of the windmill to the turbine company is greater than the value of the households to enjoying a peaceful environment, then a mutually beneficial arrangement can be attained. So basically this windmill company can pay the family the amount that the family values their peace and quiet at. So if the turbine company pays that family enough, they're going to say, yeah, go ahead and run your windmill. That's fine by us. The turbine company can compensate the neighboring household by giving them money and retaining their business. So now if the case goes to court and the neighbors win, then they will be ceased of this monetary gain, and the turbine company too will have to shut down its operations. And if the case goes to the court and the turbine company wins, then also the residents have nothing to gain. I think what they're saying is if it went to court and the turbine company won, which meant they were allowed to run their windmill, the family could pay the turbine company an amount that they value the peace and quiet at, that the turbine would shut down its windmill if the company were to pay an amount that is probably worth more than running the windmill. So without involving government, a mutually beneficial agreement can be attained if there are no costs to bargaining, i.e. no transaction costs are involved. Now take the case of any public good, say a park. Entry is free. Anybody can enter, play, sleep, walk, run, cycle, etc. As we went over in the previous question, a park is a public good. It's non-rival, meaning that if I walk through the park, it doesn't prevent you from walking through the park, and non-excludable in that nobody can tell you not to walk through the park. Okay, take the pace of a park. You can run, walk, whatever. Nobody will care about the health of the park or maintenance of the park. Eventually, it will start deteriorating, and no one will want to enter it. Coase Theorem doesn't work here, as there are not going to be any mutual beneficial ways of bargaining. It's not possible to divide the park into a private party. No one's incentives are being hurt here, and hence there is no need of bargaining and coming to an agreement. Had it been privately owned, the owner would have charged a usage fee and in turn kept the park neat and clean. Hence, the essence of private property is important in the case of Coase Theorem. I think this example here is assuming that the government doesn't own the park and it's not maintained, which is fine. There's a chart for the Coase Theorem, I think. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but I should probably draw that for you guys if we're talking about it. I can hopefully explain what it is I'm drawing. So on the y-axis, we've got the marginal effect of the externality. So in their example, this is the, I believe this is the externality is going to be the effect, like the noise effect to the family. On the x-axis here, they have fertilizer use, but in our case, that'll be like windmill use. The MD marginal damage curve. Is going to be how much the company runs the windmill. So the more they run the windmill, the more damage that is done. Marginal benefit is going to be from the company's perspective. Obviously, the longer the company runs the windmill, the more benefit they're going to get as it produces more power. So at this point here, when windmill use is 0, the marginal benefit is at its highest, and as windmill use increases, the marginal benefit falls. So if they go to court and property rights are assigned at I don't remember that off the top of my head. I'm probably going to have to search this up. Okay, so before there are property rights, the windmill company is going to use its windmill until it no longer offers a benefit. That's this point here, so that is Q2. And then when property rights are assigned, either way, one is going to pay the other to a point where the marginal benefit is equal to the marginal damage. So if the property rights were sent to the homeowners living there, then they're going to pay the windmill company to use their windmill less. Or sorry, no, if the property rights were assigned to the windmill company, the homeowners are going to pay the windmill company to run the windmill less. The property rights were sent to the homeowners. Then they would pay to have the windmill use reduction. So when that happens, they're going to move to a point where the marginal benefit equals the marginal damage, Q1. Yeah. It's been a long time since I drew this graph. I apologize for the somewhat rough explanation, but this was an excellent answer by our junior tutor. You can look into it a little further if you just Google Coase Theorem. The gist of it is that in the absence of transaction costs, an efficient outcome can be reached if property rights are assigned. Question 5.